Hi, good morning. Welcome to Nurses Care Hub Huddle EasyTalks this Sunday. We are so glad that you joined us today. We have some inspirational ladies that you need to hear from today, and I would like to introduce them. My name is Sonia Rogers. I'm with Nurses Care Hub, and I would first like to introduce our guest speaker today. Her name is Dr. Gloria Donnelly. She is a PhD, RN, and a fellow of the American Academy of Nursing. She served as the founding dean of Drexel University's College of Nursing and Health Professions from 2002 to 2016. She is also, her interest is in psychiatric mental health nursing, led her to hold a clinical and educational positions at Eastern Pennsylvania Psychiatric Hospital and the Institute of Pennsylvania Hospital. She has held faculty appointments at the University of Pennsylvania, School of Nursing, Trenton State College in New Jersey, and Villanova University. She was the founding dean of nursing at LaSalle University and is the first dean of the School of Nursing at MCP Hahnemann University, appointed in July 6, 1996, and the first dean of the Merged College of Nursing and Health Professions at Drexel University in 2002. She is also an author and co-author of 4 textbooks, winner of 2 AGN Book of the Year awards, and currently an editor of the Holistic Nursing Practice and refereed journal. Dr. Donnelly speaks at the national level on nursing education and a variety of mental health topics, including assertiveness, stress, and change. I would also like to announce and introduce our moderator today, and her name is Erica Cheatham. Erica Cheatham has 22 years of nursing experience. She is an APRN here in San Antonio. She has been a nurse for 22 years in our community. She's a mom. She is a yoga expert. She has her BSN and her MSN from the University of Texas San Antonio School of Nursing program right here in San Antonio. And we are so honored to have both of these inspirational, intelligent, wonderful women on our Nurses Care Hub Huddle Easy Talks this morning. And they are going to talk about overcoming secondary stress, taking care, taking better care of yourself, something that we all could use right now. And I would like to start with Erica Cheatham, and she's going to moderate today's show. And we want to hear more about her yoga and how she introduces what she loves to do with her holistic approach with mind, body, and spirit. So, Erica, tell us a little bit about what you do and why it motivates you in your field and others.
Hi, thank you so much, Sonia, for that beautiful introduction. I am beyond thankful and just so privileged to be here today to just be able to share this platform with you and with Dr. Donnelly. This is most definitely a different time that we are all enjoying, and I hope that I can inspire and motivate all of us, nurses and caregivers and healthcare providers, just to be able to approach our life in a different way. I am a nurse practitioner, I'm a yoga instructor, and these are definitely unique and stressful times that we are all going through. We have all been forced to retreat and redirect who we are in this new world that we're living in. And so I just really want to focus in on the topic of mindfulness and self-awareness and just being able to tune into who you are as your authentic self. And a big question that I have for all of us is, how do we want to show up in this new world that we're living in? How do we want to come out of this either better or just with more knowledge and having to just really come to the table with a new set of tools where we're able to give that as well. So as a yoga instructor and a practitioner, I am definitely not immune to stress. I am going through this just like the rest of us. And I go back to a time in my life where I was overworked and depleted and just running myself in. And I think we all tend to do that as healthcare providers. We tend to give of ourselves so much, and we leave very little space for that inward journey of who we are. And so I really want to just highlight some ways where we can be more mindful, where we can hopefully just hold a stronger table and really come to a different time where we begin to shift our awareness inward while we're also giving to other people. And so we all wear so many hats as healthcare providers. We love to do, we love to give, and we love to just be there for everybody. As nurses, we're trained in the art of compassion. We know how to be empathetic. We know how to listen. We know how to give of ourselves. And myself included, I definitely love to be able to share that. And I think this is definitely more of a time to turn those gifts inward and really practice all of those gifts on ourselves. And it's a way to be able to fill our own tank before we fill the tanks of others. So we always want to come from a place of abundance versus a place of depletion. And I really, really would like for us to begin to hopefully just um, give back to others and also teach others. So we're not only giving this art of self-care and mindfulness, but we also need to begin to teach it to our younger students that are coming out of grad school, teaching it to our children, so that way they can come to a place of knowing when and where to stop, knowing when to say no, and knowing what those healthy boundaries are when it comes to stress and when it comes to being able to just practice self-care and mindfulness. Yoga is one of the ways in which I practice self-care. Of course, it's not the only way. I do a lot of other things as well, and has really helped me to just tune in and create those healthy boundaries. Whether it's the yoga or something else, I definitely encourage you to find something that is in tune with your spiritual alignment, something that you're able to tap into creatively. And I think we can just come out better. We are all living in this time that none of us expected to go through, but I think we can become more knowledgeable and just come out of this stronger and definitely with more endurance.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We all need this right now, and it's dynamic, and it's something that we all could use. And thank you for sharing that with us. It's something that we could all take from, and hoped that others will as well. Let's start off a little bit with if you want to ask Dr. Donnelly, Erica, about overcoming secondary stress, because that's why we're here today. We're here to talk about overcoming secondary stress in medical and nursing practice, and we want to hear um, the good stuff from Dr. Donnelly, and share everything that she can share with everybody that's watching today.
Absolutely. Super excited. So, Dr. Donnelly, you have an upcoming book, Overcoming Secondary Stress in Medical and Nursing Practice, a guide to professional resilience and personal well-being. This is a second edition. You co-authored with Robert J. Wicks. Tell us more. When is the release date? How exciting.
Okay. This is the second edition of Overcoming Secondary Stress. I'm a nurse and a psychologist, and Bob Wicks is a psychologist. And Bob approached me to do the second edition with him at the very beginning of the pandemic because we believed that it would be a tremendous help to medical and nursing practitioners who were living through this very stressful time. And so we worked on it. It is now in production, and the books will be available in February. And of course, it is really focused on helping the practitioner to take care of themselves and build their resilience as they live through these very difficult periods in practice. The first edition really didn't target nurses and PAs. It was primarily physicians, relief workers, but this edition really has a focus on what I consider to be the foundation of the healthcare system. You know, there are 3.5 million nurses. There are over 200,000 PAs, and then all of the physicians. So this is where the tools that we offer in the book to look at yourself and to take better care of yourself, and really to increase your awareness about your own potential to develop resilience.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Donnelly. That is such great information, and I am looking forward to having that book in my hands, and also hopefully I can give that to others and share. With the pandemic still in high alert, having virtual school, so many changes for us all. Now is definitely more of a stressful time than ever. You have spoken on a national level on nursing education and a variety of mental health topics to include assertiveness and stress and change. Can you talk about stressors, particularly with nurses and teachers, and how perhaps we can become more self-aware of our own triggers and hopefully face them with more ease?
Yeah, yes, I can. I think that this is a particularly good time to begin to focus on self care. You know, in the curriculum of most nurses and educational programs, those programs that educate practitioners and teachers usually do not put sufficient emphasis on how to care for the self, what to
Mhm.
look for, how to be active. And for my whole career, from the 1970s on, I have been involved in helping particularly nurses to look at their environments, look at the individuals that they work with, the healthcare team, and take their rightful place and have their say assertively, and to manage the stress of the work environment by focusing on self, by scanning one's behaviors, by figuring out one's triggers, and then doing something about that. Um, the era that I began all of this was a very interesting one. I flew all over the country. I met with nurses in hundreds of hospitals, and there was a particular focus on nurses in acute care. And there were a lot of issues around nurse physician relationships and the stresses that went on. But you can see that things have shifted a bit, that the stresses in healthcare are now equally shared by physicians if you read the literature and the studies. And in with respect to the nursing profession, there's a tremendous emphasis on the work environment, particularly unhealthy work environments where nurses may be bullied, and that bullying may occur colleague to colleague, manager to nurse. Physicians at the same time are very stressed by their loss of status in the American healthcare system, by the pressures on them from insurers and the pressures of the computerization of the healthcare system that um, are put upon them. And so it's a very different time. Even teachers, if you think about the pandemic today, what extra stressors on teachers, not only contagion, but many teachers are having to learn for the first time to manage these technologies in order to more safely deliver the educational content. Uh, when I worked at Drexel, we got into online learning early. I've spoken to some nurse educators who are really struggling to master the online formats in addition to handling the stresses of the pandemic, the drop in enrollment, nurses learning online who have the pressures of long hours at work and dealing with patients and families through this pandemic. So the issues have really shifted, but stress is stress. And of course, we deal with, I think, something that is much more unique to caregiving professions, and that's secondary stress.
Thank you so much, Dr. Donnelly. You are absolutely right. We are all dealing with so many new things, and none of us is immune to dealing with these stressors. Talk a little bit about how can we focus on what is stressing us out and more on what is the resolution?
Oh, well, one of the things that I recommend, and in the book, there's a chapter on wicked problems. And wicked problems are problems that never really can be solved. We can improve the situation. So we need to develop new mental tools. If you can't solve a problem, maybe you could make things a little better. Maybe you could communicate a little more clearly. Maybe you can do a good workaround that still gets you to the same improvement. So uh, the things that stress us out in healthcare today are these problems, all of the things we have to learn that are outside the realm of caregiving. And there are many, if you read the studies, there are many nurses today who say they spend so much time documenting, ordering, uh, going through checklists that they're not having enough time to spend with their patients. Physicians say the same thing. What's the resolution? Well, I think both nurses and physicians have to speak up more. And how do we do that? We need a better sense of self. We need to think more about our own perspective. And we need to identify our triggers. What makes us angry? How do we decide when to show anger? Because experiencing anger and showing anger is really a decision. It's not an automatic kind of thing. That's what the the whole issue of self-care helps us to do. Focus on self, become more active, develop a perspective, look at our environment, figure out what triggers us, and learn strategies to manage many of those situations. For example, I will give you one example of a very simple strategy, which is you are caught in a difficult situation. Let's say a nurse manager is reading you out publicly. What do you do? How do you respond? Well, uh, you have a right to leave. If you cannot come up with what you believe would be an appropriate response, and you are on the verge of tears, you are within your perfect right to say, I must leave and go to the restroom. Very simple. Get yourself out of the situation so you can breathe deep, calm yourself, think about it, and then even allow yourself to be pursued by the nurse manager, and you could have it out in the bathroom instead of in front of 8 other staff members. So that's what all of this self-care, developing a protocol does for you. It helps you to develop an awareness, a very acute awareness of how you think, how you frame situations, and why you respond the way you do, and how you can change that. And of course, it's all about choice. You will choose the change.
Thank you so much. I love that. As a nurse practitioner and a yoga instructor, I definitely teach the philosophy of knowing when to stay grounded and knowing your boundaries as well. And so I love to teach that on the mat as well as off the mat. And just knowing when to pull away, knowing when to say no, or knowing when you need to take a breath and take some fresh air and step away from that moment. We all know what stress is. We all know what potentially can stress us out. Can you talk to us a little bit about what is secondary stress?
Okay. But first, I'd like to say, in your response, there is the beginnings of a great article, I believe, called "On Behaving on the Mat and Off the Mat." So you ought to be thinking about that in terms of what you teach and getting that down in writing and getting it into the literature, because it's a nice metaphor for how to decide which way to go and for looking at your environment. So, secondary stress, let me give the example of an architect or a software engineer. Sure, they have stress, their jobs are very complex, but they don't have families calling you to ask a patient's condition. They don't have the stress of, is this pain medication working well enough or not? And what do I do about it to help this patient deal with the pain? They don't have the stress of having to deal with a dying patient whose family members can't be there, can't visit because of a pandemic. They don't have the stress as many nurses, hundreds of nurses had in the beginning of this pandemic, of not having the right kind of equipment to protect themselves. So secondary stress is a unique kind of stress that happens as a function of caring for others. My colleague, Bob Wicks, talks about a situation where he was in Rwanda. He was working with caseworkers who were trying to replace children that had been kidnapped from their families. And it was grueling, emotional work. And he sat with a woman who was a relief worker who said, I don't know if I can do this anymore. And so, because I keep thinking about the children, uh, imagine a pediatric nurse who's working in ICU, who's dealing with parents whose children are dying. I mean, the range of emotions and difficult situations that we experience as caregivers is staggering. And so that's what secondary stress is. It's the stress that is caused by caring for others and having them depend on us. And then it can lead to stress is what happens, and the result can be burnout, and we'll talk a little bit about that, and post traumatic stress disorder, which many people in highly stressful situations deal with, particularly the military. So, uh, secondary stress is just part and parcel of what we do in our profession, and we have to learn to deal with it more effectively to take better care of ourselves.
Thank you. I definitely think we all need to be aware of secondary stress and how that contributes to ourselves as a human being, both personally and professionally. What are some of the conditions in the healthcare environment that contribute to the development of secondary stress?
Okay, well, there are lots of them. If we just could focus a bit on the pandemic, it's the uncertainty of the pandemic, the mixed messaging about the pandemic. When will there be a vaccine? Who will get it first? Will it be healthcare workers? It's lack of beds. Now we see that happening with this second surge. I don't hear much about PPE, But remember, all of these stressors that are being caused by the pandemic may be superimposed on what was already an unhealthy work environment. And those are the things that nurses deal with on a daily basis. Um, the demands of technology expansion. You know, as I sit and watch the films of nurses who are really considered heroes on the news every night, I wonder what are the pressures on those nurses of documenting everything they've done for those patients. It must be enormous. And it's only one thing, one added pressure. So I'm wondering, you know, this pandemic has really highlighted many of the weaknesses in our healthcare system. We're heading into a nursing shortage. The fastest growing segment of the workforce is healthcare because of the aging of the population. So I am wondering how all of this is going to pan out in terms of our ability to recruit nurses. Will we be able to recruit the 44% more nurses that we're going to need over the next 20 years, given what has gone on in this pandemic? So there are many, many drivers of secondary stress in healthcare. So 16% of RN employment will rise. Uh, that's staff nurses, enormous demands for more nurse practitioners and more nurse anesthetists. Will they come into the field having experienced and witnessed what has happened in this pandemic? And of course, we have health disparities. Uh, we all know it's more difficult to take care of folks in this pandemic who have pre existing conditions. And many of those are from economic levels, from poor communities. They don't have insurance, or the insurance they have is inadequate. All of that creates additional stress on the caregiving population, on practitioners. And so they're just a few of the conditions in the healthcare environment that contribute to this stress and that really feed into the need for us to take better care of ourselves.
Thank you, Dr. Donnelly. We have all been impacted on so many levels, both professionally in the healthcare system and personally as well. We have all been dealing with so many things in addition to. Can you go over some signs of secondary stress?
Sure. I'll just mention a few of them. There are lots of them, but certainly mood changes, depressive mood, even hyperreactivity. You know, someone says hello and you get upset. So that's a mood change. Or you become indifferent to everything going on around you. You're bored. You're working on automatic pilot. You're going through the motions. You may be a chronic helper. That is the person that everyone on the unit knows to run to when they need someone to bail them out. And you're so into this chronic helping that you're depleting yourself. And then developing many of the other signs of secondary stress. Or you may become cynical. You may become arrogant. You may be prone to very directly expressing all your negative thoughts about your colleagues or even your manager because you don't, quote, care anymore what people think. You know they need you. They're not going to fire you, you think. And so you just let your emotions take over. You may experience conflict with patients because you get impatient, or families who desperately want information or who are critical, or conflict with colleagues. And the ANA has an entire initiative on really looking at the elements of unhealthy work environments. And I would really encourage you to go and look at that. I don't like the term bullying. I think it's kind of school age, but it's what's happening in healthcare today, colleague to colleague. So that's another sign that stress, secondary stress, has really built inside of a work environment. There's helplessness, and we talked about chronic helping and the inability to set limits, the inability to say, I really can't take another patient. Is there anyone else you can find? Uh, it's that ability to think on your feet that kind of goes away because you are so stressed by everything going on in the work environment. So those are just a few of the signs. There are a lot more, but I think they are the ones that you'll most often recognize.
Thank you so much. I can definitely, as I'm sure, as well as many of us nurses, identify with that being a chronic helper. I think, we are all so good at what we do as far as giving and being able to listen and being able to be compassionate. And that's what makes us who we are. And I also have to say that in my practice, I can't even tell you how many times I hear both nurses and teachers say, I'm so good at taking care of everybody else, and I leave myself for last. And I think this is the perfect time to be able to shift that paradigm and to no longer identify with that, I take care of myself last. We need to take care of ourselves first, so that way we are giving from a place of abundance versus a place of depletion. And so I love that as far as the signs of secondary stress. Can you share current and possible personal efforts at self-care?
I want to interrupt here
Yeah,
for
there's
one
a
second,
question.
because I will interrupt for Facebook questions,
Okay.
because we love to hear from our Facebook viewers. And first, I want to share a comment, and this is from Sandra Roland Gonzalez, and she said, "Yes, thank you, Erica, for always keeping me grounded when I'm at work. I'm so blessed to have you there." And so that's very nice that she shared that with us today. Um, Dr. Nelson Twazon has a question. The language that we use during these times reflect these stresses: twindemic, new normal, surges, etc. What are faced with what is seemingly an insurmountable information war? What are your thoughts on these as causing secondary stress, and what can we do, Dr. Donnelly?
I think the information war is and the data deluge we, and the expectations for documenting everything. I sit on the board of a professional liability company, and I recently reviewed some documents around nurse documentation. And as I was reviewing the documents, I was thinking to myself, when will the nurse ever have time to give care when all of this needs to be documented? There's a physician by the name of Arnie Iser, who actually wrote forward to our forthcoming book, who himself has a publication out talking about the stressors, particularly on physicians and nurses, around the very issue that Nelson raises, and that is the expectation of enormous amounts of data and documentation that need to be provided by physicians and nurses. And it is a war. And I think that if this is going on and we all know war stories of institutions that have brought in a new electronic health record or a new electronic patient documentation record that was designed by people who maybe never had, were never sick in their lives, let alone ever cared for patients. And the clicking around becomes so onerous. I remember dealing with the stress of my own primary care physician 20 years ago when he had to master the use of this new uh, electronic medical record. And I happened to be there for an exam. He knew I was a psychologist and a psychiatric nurse. And he ran out of his office and asked me, was it acceptable to take the computer and break it in half? Would that help him manage his stress? It's an enormous problem. And I think that physicians and nurses and PAs really need to take a stand, to speak up and to write. Do a blog. Somebody should do a blog on these stressors and get that information to these companies who demand the information and to the companies who design the systems. Uh, and I know that's going on now, but we live in the information age, and that has become one of the major drivers of secondary stress.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr.
Thank you for that, Dr.
Donnelly.
Donnelly. Thank you, Nelson, for asking that question. Please, viewers, if you have any questions, we have maybe 10 minutes left with these inspiring, professional, intelligent women here today. So please send in any questions that you have. And we'd like to move on to the next question. I want to really talk about this, the self-assessment also, but we'll get to that after we go through this next question.
Perfect. In terms of self-care assessment, how can we cope and what can we learn from these divided times and COVID? Something that we can learn from. I would like to ask the viewers to make a commitment and definitely make a pledge to connect to self-care and just embrace something that is in line with your true authentic self.
Well, I would on that issue, I would like to say that what's happening now has happened before. And there is a historical record of how society has dealt with past pandemics. When all of this started, I remembered the story. My father, who was 104 when he died, and he lived with me, and he recounted over and over again, particularly in his declining years, stories about the sister that he lost during the Spanish flu pandemic of 1917 and 1918. So, what happens after a pandemic, and what can we look forward to in terms of helping us to cope? First of all, I think the message is clear. We need to take some time every day, even if it's only 15 or 20 minutes, and sit in a chair and clear our heads. You may be into meditation, you may be a very spiritual person, and you may just pray or just let the thoughts roll through your mind without dwelling on any of them. And breathe deeply. Now, my father would talk about losing his sister and then what happened afterwards. And after every major pandemic, and you can actually, I have a book right here on my desk that I just finished. If you're interested in this kind of stuff, it's called Epidemics and Society, and it's by Snowden. And it takes you from the Black Death in Roman times. There were 3 plagues of Black Death, Y pestis, in Europe. And then he talks about cholera and typhus and smallpox. He ends with SARS and HIV. And this book just stopped short of the development of COVID-19. After every pandemic, there are major advancements. And I think we will see that with this one also, that there will be advancements in how prepared hospitals are to confront situations like this. And nurses should be keeping a few notes. And when things calm down, sit in a room with hospital administrators and say, if we do this, this, and this, these are our lessons from the pandemic, then we will not experience the horror that many healthcare environments are experiencing during this pandemic. So I think being hopeful for the future is one way of coping. Focusing more on our own self-care and our perspective. Taking time alone. Maybe you walk. Maybe you belong to a yoga group. Maybe you go and sit in the back of the church or the chapel for 10 or 15 minutes during a shift. But you have the right to do that. In self-care, there are lots of strategies, and that's what you'll get out of the book. It'll be a protocol, a set of questions you ask yourself, and then from your answers, you can develop your own self-care protocol. There's a really neat story called The Story of the Arrow, and it's by Han, H-A-N-H. He wrote a book called No Mud, No Lotus. And it says, we can get pierced by an arrow, and it causes us pain. But it's our reactions after the pain that are things that we can control. So it's our reactivity after something happens that we need to focus on and then make choices that really address preserving our health and creating resilience. We need to focus on carving that path to self-knowledge, which you'll get from the 60 questions we pose in the book that you ask yourself. Asking yourself whether you have a sense of humor and laughter in your life. Very important. Humor is a very important coping tool. Maybe someday Sonia will invite me back and I'll give you the talk on humor, health, and healing, because it is one of the best coping tools that healthcare providers can use. Having trusted friends, having colleagues, having a person in your life that could tell you, quite frankly, when you're going off base. And then embracing periods of silence, solitude, and cultivating your own form of spirituality, even if you're not part of a formal faith system or religion. So they're just a few examples, and I think I'll end with a quote that I recommend you type it out or you print out the PowerPoint and you hang it somewhere on your desk or on your unit. And it's by a monk, Dominic of Calaruga. And he said, and I think this sort of sums it up, the cyclone derives its power from a calm center. So when you see those weather pictures of the eye of the storm, it's perfectly calm. So does a person derive their power from a calm center. So that's really the focus of self-care. Thanks.
Dr. Donnelly, that was amazing. And I want to share with you just some comments as we're coming close to an end. We have Monica Garza said, great conversation. Ronald Estrella said, excellent presentation. Ronald Estrella also put a message here. He says, iron triangle. increased demand to healthcare worker, HCW, learn how to meet the
Yes.
demand, understand self, and have a welcoming and understanding perspective.
Great.
And so I wanted to share that with you. He wanted to mention that. And so absolutely, you are more than welcome, and we will invite you to Nurses Care Hub, and we can't wait to
Okay.
hear more about your book. And I just think that allowing ourselves to be exactly who we are, where we are, is so important. And I think that having both of you ladies here today has made me realize that, and a lot of others who are viewing today learn from all that you have shared with us today. So, Erica Cheatham, thank you so much for being with us. If you have
Thank
any
you.
comments, please let us know. And Dr. Donnelly, you are a friend and a contributor to Nurses Care Hub, and you're always welcome. And so is Erica Cheatham to our talk. So if you have any last words, please share with us.
Thank you.
Thank you
Okay.
so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you, everyone who is watching today. Have a great rest of your Sunday.